studio is a room of truth. Yes, Dylan. Say hi back. I took attendance. I have not yet taken attendance for third or fourth hour.
You didn't take attendance in 6 hours?
Hint, hint, hint.
We can skip
hint. Hint, hint.
You're making Jackie turn off the lights.
Thank you.
She walked for a long time. That's mean.
She what? She couldn't walk for a long time, and so now, this late into her recovery, 4 steps are too much?
Yes.
I apologize, Jackie, for my insensitivity. How cruel of me.
You are?
What?
Okay.
What?
Yeah, I'm calling bull
Yeah.
on this. I'm so
I sent it back yesterday, last night, when I was grading them. Say what?
Never mind.
Have you had to send any of those emails home to our parents?
Not yet. There are some that need to go. Yes?
Do you have our short answers graded?
Almost. I started those after I finished the math quizzes last night. Unit 3.
I feel like that's probably going to tank my grade, though. Like, I'm pretty content right now.
It's actually turning out that it's not as bad as it felt like.
I was just going to say, is there an F plus? Can you F plus it?
Every F is a bad F.
F stands for failing Miranda.
You guys are obviously not looking at the bright side of things.
Obviously, Miranda's never had
Give
one.
an F, there is no right side of things.
Just give Miranda an F. Alright, let's start.
I've got an F side.
Let's learn about sunk costs now.
This reminds me of the Titanic.
I feel like the Titanic.
No one can raise the Titanic and make it sail again. That's what the sunk cost is.
Well,
It's lost.
Yeah, me too. I hit a glacier like 2 chapters ago.
I'm in a glacier in the second chapter.
Herndon, can you do something about this? I think he was. That was weird. That was weird.
Vernon, can you do something?
She goes, Hernan, can you do something about this? She goes, what?
Okie dokie then. So we were a little bit into sunk costs yesterday. So fixed cost is a sunk cost. It's those things that you have to pay whether you're working or not. Rent, insurance, if you have a contract or a lease, like you lease your copy machines, you're still paying for the lease of those copy machines. A lot of snow removal companies, if you live in like a condominium community, they will sign a contract with the snow removal company saying you have to remove the snow if it is 1 inch or deeper within a certain number of hours of the cessation of the snowfall. And in there is a clause to protect the snow removal company that says even if there is no snowfall, we get fixed amount X for having reserved our services for you and committed to this contract. And so that amount is definitively a sunk cost for the homeowners association. Okay, so the moral of the story here is fixed costs or sunk costs should not factor into your decision. You're paying them anyway. No matter what, you're paying that. So if you're deciding to move, you live in your first post-college apartment and rent is $750 a month. And you're deciding whether or not to move to a different apartment and the rent there is $850 a month. What amount should you be counting in your decision? the $100 difference because you're already paying the $750. Okay, in the long run, how do firms decide to exit the market? The cost. There is actually a cost of exiting the market, and that cost is what you lose, which would be your total revenue. You're giving that up by exiting the market. So guess what? If your total revenue is non-existent or negative, you should probably exit the market. The benefit is your cost savings. The fact that you will eliminate those fixed costs. There will be no more sunk costs, no more rent, no more insurance, no more leases, no more contracts. Dashby?
So if total cost is greater than total revenue, the firm should exit the market.
If total cost is greater than total revenue, a firm should exit the market. If it appears that that is going to persist as more than a short-run problem. If you go back to our discussion of subsidies and whether or not subsidies should be given to companies, and we talked about a company that's going to be sustainable should be able to sustain a loss in the short run. If your projection is that that situation is going to turn around, then no, don't give up. But if you are making buggy whips and wooden wagon wheels in 1900 and your total costs are beginning to exceed your total revenues, and you're looking at Ford Motor Corporation and their increased sales and your decreased sales of wagon wheels and buggy whips, and you can't see that changing in the future, it's possible that you should consider closing down. So the firm exits if the total revenue is less than the total cost. Divide both sides by Q, and you get the decision equation. Exit if P is less than average total cost. The flip, well, hello, Kyle Emmerich. The flip side of this, and the more uplifting side of this, is how do I know when I want to get into the market? The answer is the opposite. If your total revenues will exceed your total costs. This is why it is so hard to start a business. You don't just go throwing money around and open a business and hope it's going to work out. You actually sit and figure this stuff out before you spend money on designing your logo and sign and leasing your first storefront and hiring employees and buying computers and displays or whatever it is that you need to do whatever business it is you're going to do. You got to figure this stuff out. This is why babysitting is a good entree into the adult work world for junior high age kids. What are their total costs? Their time. And their total revenue? Whatever they can get, right? Now, who actually incurs the cost of them babysitting? Mom, can you give me a ride? I've got a babysitting job. There's some costs incurred there, and if parents were realistic, they would make the kids cough up the gas money or pay their cab fare, right? Now, I just call Lyft. Okay. So the entry decision is the same, just inverted. If P is greater than the average total cost, the firm should enter the market. Guess what? We can graph this. That was not nearly enthusiastic enough. We can graph this. That is true. I think we can graph the level of despair in this classroom right now, too. So, guess what? We want to get into the market at any point right of the intersection of Mc and Loratic. So the firm's supply curve, their long-run supply curve, is the portion of the marginal cost curve above long-run average total cost. So we're going to show you the whole supply curve, but what really matters is from the intersection on up. Just like what we were looking at yesterday. Say what? Okay. Hey, boys and girls, guess what it's time to do now? Apply.
Mad Libs.
No, there's no time for Mad Libs. You will be shocked to find the rarity of Mad Libs in your college classes. Yeah.
You can do them yourself though, because the masters don't care.
Yeah,
They
like
don't.
in big lecture halls, I bet you and the people around you play.
Okay. So on this graph, we should be able to shade in the area that represents the firm's total profit. Think. It increases. I hear a lot of guessing out there.
It's like the story of my life.
Anybody think they know
It's the big rectangle
the big rectangle?
between the quantity up to 50 from 6 to 10 and
So Swift says it's this rectangle here.
Yes, I agree.
I think so.
because it's the area of the quantity in
Okay,
the
it's
new price.
It's above. Is it the triangle that's above?
I think Tony just agreed with her in Spanish. What just happened?
I said I think it's possible.
Is that Spanish?
What the heck happened?
No hablo español. Hablas francés. Je parle français. Sure.
I bumped a button that wasn't good.
It makes me angry too.
Okay.
French would be cool. What? I wish I would have taken Russian. I wish I would have taken Spanish.
I was right.
You were right, because we're able to produce at the average total cost of $6. So our profit per unit is $4, and we're going to sell at the quantity of the intersection between our marginal cost and marginal revenue. So what is our total profit amount?
Oh.
Yes, multiply. There you go.
Gotcha.
Good guess, Miranda. I mean, good knowledge, Miranda, because you knew that, right?
So knew that.
Or she looked at them.
I didn't actually look at the
You know it's a
notes, I
bad
just
class
realized
when
it
you
was
just
on
assume everyone's guessing.
What?
You know it's a bad class when you just assume everyone's guessing.
Bad class or tough class.
There you go. Tough class.
Challenging.
Actually, honors roll civ is pretty hard, so
Oh, that was a hard class.
it's like
Honors roll civ
the
is-
smoothest.
there. I haven't seen it, but didn't.
I took it last year.
Okay. Now, what if our firm is not profiting? This is what the graph looks like when there's not profit. When marginal revenue is below average total cost, you got a problem. Okay? So what are we producing at? What level are we producing at? What's it costing us to produce each unit? $5. And what are we selling each item at? And so we are losing $2 a unit, and we are selling how many units at that loss?
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh my gosh, that made sense. Did that make sense over there too? Totally. All right. All right then, moving on. You want to punch me so much? Wow. Okay, thanks for that. We have some assumptions to make about market supply. You know what? Let Mr. Kupfer's assumptions about assumptions go for a moment, because while that may happen on an individual basis, when it comes to economics, there are things we have to assume in order to operate.
His says you can't define a word with a word.
You can't define a word with a word. All right, all existing firms.
Should I write this down?
In order to look at market supply, we have to assume that all existing firms and new entrants have identical costs. It's not going to cost anybody anything different than anyone else. Okay. Matthias has X amount of costs in his lawn mowing business, and Dashby wants to get into the business. His costs are going to be exactly the same for our purposes here. No matter how many additional firms come into or exit the market, their costs remain the same. It does not get cheaper or more expensive to do business. We also have to assume that the number of firms in the market is fixed in the short run and variable in the long run. We assume it's fixed in the short run because you don't just quit your business willy-nilly, because you've already invested those sunk costs. And because there is free entry and exit in the market, because it is a perfectly competitive market, then we have to assume that the number of firms in the market is variable in the long run. It's not going to change overnight, week by week in the short run, but in the long run, over months and years, is going to change.
It's gonna what?
It's going to change. My mama always said, life is like a box of chocolates. In the short run, there's a certain number of chocolates in the box, but in the long run, they might change.
Okay.
That's my monologue for the audition for the spring play, so
Are you trying not to be Miss Saigon?
I am. I'm gonna be the oldest, ugliest, chubbiest Miss Saigon ever. I also can't sing.
Okay, all you have to do is lay in a bed with a bunch of guys. That's all you have to do. Be Miss Saigon.
Imagine how great I'll look in a tight-fitting dress with a slit up to the hip. Okay, short run market supply curve. What are you guys just giggling about over there?
Girl stuff.
They got the humor bug over there. Alex, Taylor, Maddie, quit tickling them.
Sicko.
Okay, as long as price is greater than or equal to average variable cost, each firm is going to make its profit maximizing quantity. They're going to produce at that intersection of marginal revenue, marginal cost. This is a rule. What, Sherman? No. What? What?
I don't even know what he said. I couldn't understand.
I was just asking you a question.
Your voice and your mouth say one thing, but your smile says another. What did you say, Sherman? Uh-huh. The fact that you're so reluctant to repeat it for the class and I kind of indicates that it's something you maybe shouldn't have said.
No, I was just wondering what was in your drink. That was kind of weird since it was pink.
Cranberry grape. Cran grape.
I feel like grapes.
Neither of those colors are pink.
Cranberries are when they're diluted.
But grapes are green and purple.
So it's white grapes and red cranberries. Pink. Okay. Clear back to chapter 4 when we talked about supply. At each price, the market quantity supplied is the sum of quantities supplied by all firms. Duh, you're taking this for granted by this point, correct? Let's look at it graphically. Okay, when we have one firm, there's their marginal cost, which is the same thing as saying it is their supply curve. From where to where is it their supply curve? From above the average variable cost on up. Okay, so what do you, so we get 1,000 of those firms. And remember, they all have the same costs, which makes them identical. So the market curve takes each P of one firm's curve, multiplies it by 1,000, the number of firms in the market. What's the green line? It's just price one. It's just a price. We have to have a price to figure this out. So we mark a price. For this individual firm, this intersection is a quantity of 10. So when we take that times 1,000, we end up with 10,000. So if we throw in a different price, this point here is going to be important to us, right? And we'll be able to multiply it by 1,000 and translate it over here. Guess what we could do too to further shape this curve? Pick a third price. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, look at this. And if we connect the dots, what do we get? And what do we call that straight line? The market supply. Boom, baby. Yes, Michael. Why would anyone buy anything at price 2 or 3? We're not concerned about demand right now. We're only looking at market supply. If people were only buying things at price 1, this is supply, not demand. We have no idea where the demand curve is intersecting any of this. We have no idea what price actually exists in the market. This is willingness and ability to produce. All right. Okay. Always in the long run, the number of firms in the market can change because it's a perfectly competitive market and anyone can enter or exit the market. If the firms who are there are profiting, guess what? More people are going to want to do that business as well, and so they're going to be encouraged to enter the market. In the short run then, when they come in, the market supply curve is going to shift to the right because it's instead of multiplying by 1,000, you're multiplying by 1,001. And so that's going to shift that curve to the right. Now, over time, because we are shifting that curve to the right, what's going to happen? Price is going to fall, profits will be reduced across the market, and eventually people will stop coming into the market. And so that supply curve will become more fixed. If the businesses in the market are losing money, they're going to tend to exit. And what's going to happen to the market supply curve? It's going to, they're going to turn into trees. It's going to shift to the left. And what will happen to price? It'll go up, which will do what?
It's going to increase profits.
Or reduce their losses, since we're in a scenario where they're losing money. Okay? So when price increases, they stop losing money, which means that fewer businesses will be leaving the market, which means that the supply curve will become more fixed and numbers will stabilize. It's so commonsensical that it's hard to believe that it's actually economics. It just makes
But
sense.
it's econ, so when you think about it, you're like, oh, it's harder than actually.
Yeah.
It's maybe like graphing.
All right. Zero profit condition. The zero profit condition. This is not where you want to be in business, is it?
Better than negative.
It is better than losing money. That is true, Tony. Thank you, Captain Silver Lining. All right, in long-run equilibrium, the process of entry or exit is complete. Any remaining firms are going to earn zero economic profit. The equation for zero economic profit is price equals average total cost. So when we were looking at that curve, Michael, where there was price 1, price 2, price 3, at price 1, sure, that's where consumers would want to buy, but suppliers don't want to supply there because they're not actually making money.
So when you talk about like the zero profit, are you talking about after like their salaries are taken out?
Yeah, you're going to cover all your costs. This is accounting profit. You're covering all of your costs. It's also economic profit. Covering all your costs, fixed and variable, and there's nothing left over. Since firms will produce where price equals marginal revenue equals marginal cost, the zero profit condition is price equals marginal cost equals average total cost. It is transitive property. Oh, math, why must you follow me? Oh my gosh, I taught Algebra 2 yesterday, and I actually taught Algebra 2. And things just came out of my mouth that I hadn't even thought about. We had to factor an equation, and then I said, okay, so then you plug the number back in to solve, because it was one where you had extraneous solutions, and you had to figure out which one was the right solution. And I said, and so then you just FOIL it. And I'm like, wait a minute, was that right today? And I turn around, I'm like, do you FOIL it? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, whoo, I haven't said that in like 25 years. I remembered math.
Who are you covering?
Borsic. And I cubed rooted things too. I know, considering how poorly I math in here, it was pretty awesome. All right.
But you're allowed to use a calculator.
Remember, no, I didn't have one. Remember that marginal cost is going to intersect the average total cost at the minimum average total cost, always at that bottom of the check mark graph. It's always going to be at that lowest point. So in the long run, price will always want to equal the minimum ATC. So the obvious question in your mind is, why on earth would they want to stay in business if they're making zero profit? And that is a completely valid question to ask. Because you're thinking, if I am a CEO, I do not want to never get a raise. I don't want to never give my employees a raise. Why would you stay if there's zero profit in the market? Wow, one would hope you're not making your business decisions based upon sentimental value, but I'm sure that there are some people out there who do that. Okay. Economic profit is revenue minus all costs, meaning that includes the implicit costs.
Are you almost done with our job?
I haven't even touched them.
I guess we don't have to.
So in the zero profit equilibrium, the firms earn enough revenue to cover all of their economic costs, and their accounting profit is positive. Because accounting profit leaves out what? Implicit costs. They're in the green for dineros, for dólares, yes. Economic profit. Remember clear back to the beginning, the difference between economic profit and accounting profit?
Would it be,
Yeah, the opportunity cost.
so it would still be a good thing though if economic profit was greater than average total costs? Or is that just bad?
I suppose from a business point of view, as long as your accounting profit is still positive, if you're willing to incur those personal losses, you could operate at a point where your economic costs were greater than average total costs, but you're sacrificing a lot. You're not being compensated then for your opportunity costs. If Matthias, in running his business, is operating at an accounting profit, but he's had to get a divorce because his wife complains that he's never home, he's always working. He's lost custody of his children. There's your decision. Your economic cost is clearly higher than your average total cost because Matthias was ignoring the implicit costs in favor of the accounting profit. So it just depends upon what you as a human are willing to suffer, I guess. Michael?
So how are we putting a number behind those economic costs?
Yeah, that's where we started all of this. That's the difficult thing, is how do you value, how do you measure, how do you measure,
There you go.
how do you measure? There's an A in that word, you're ignoring the A. How do you measure?
It's a silent A.
How do you measure those economic costs? How do you put a value on your marriage? If you're 2,000 in the green, Matthias, Michael says if you've got $2,000 profit coming in every month, are you okay with the dissolution of your marriage and the loss of connection to your kids?
Well, no, because then I'm only making $24,000 a year. That's not enough to live on.
That's profit beyond your salary. We have to assume that in those costs, you're paying yourself a salary. You're putting $24,000 a year into the bank or back into the company, or paying off the loan that your grandpa gave you to start the business. Is it okay to dissolve your marriage?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. And see, Michael, there's the root answer, is it depends on the individual and what they value those implicit costs at.
So sentimental value.
You know, there's been a paradox in business and the pursuit of wealth for a long, long time. You work more hours to get more money so you can buy more stuff, but the more hours you work to get more money to buy more stuff, the less time you have to play with your toys. You know, the old line that says, he who dies with the most toys wins, except that if those toys had never been out of the package, what was the point? I made enough money to buy a yacht to sail around the world, and then I never took the time off to do it. Ah.
You don't have kids, but they left.
Yeah, that's right. Matthias's wife remarried with a man who truly loved her.
Wow. What a good.
All right. Back to this long-run market supply curve. In the long run, the typical firm is going to earn zero profit. They're going to be right here where the price equals the minimum average total cost. Stop kicking your desk. If I wanted timpani in here, I'd go down to the band room and bring one. Okay, the long-run market supply curve is thus going to be horizontal at that minimum cost. So the market supply curve is not going to be this, which is what the firm supply curve is, right? The market supply curve is going to be horizontal at that price. And looky where demand falls, Michael.
There it is.
The people don't want to pay any more than that anyway, so it all kind of works out. But, and there's always a but, the firm is going to begin in long-run equilibrium. But what happens if demand increases? And so all of a sudden, boom, uber profit. So I make Cipro. It's an antibiotic. It's what they prescribe if you happen to be exposed to anthrax. I'm a pharmaceutical company. I've been producing at... I'm a pharmaceutical company. I happen to have been producing at my minimum level here at that price forever and ever and ever. And then all of a sudden, post 9/11, some crazy pants people start spreading the anthrax around. And guess what happens? The federal government stockpiles Cipro and hands it out like candy to people who have potentially been exposed to anthrax. And all of a sudden, boom, I go from A to B, and life is good.
Is anthrax a disease or a drug?
It is a disease.
What did it do to you?
I honestly don't know. Okay, so your profit, as we've graphed it before, is this rectangle, right? Okay. Now, when that profit jumps up, when it goes from zero profit to that, what happens? Other firms enter the market, and what do? They drive the price back down. So you benefit from having already been in the market. You get that expanded profit for that period of time that it takes other people to go, ooh, money, and jump into the market and then force the prices down. And you sit here and you think to yourself, wow, when they're going, ooh, money, and expending all of that money to get into this market, how do they not know that once they do that, they're going to force the prices back down to the zero profit point?
Haven't taken econ.
I know what anthrax
Probably not the case, but
They think that they get in the market soon enough that they'll
Hey, anthrax
Yeah.
is an infection.
ultimately, we end up back at that long-run equilibrium. The quantity, the quantity has increased, but we return back to that long-run equilibrium price. We'll quit here for today.